my Amex limit built up really fast. And the one time they freaked out, it was when it was on the Jordan 4s I bought 1,000 pairs of. And it was, I had like 400K on my Amex or something like ridiculous. And they were like, are you sure you're going to be able to sell all these? They're freaking out because it's like, we got the house on the line here.
Welcome to the FBA Basecamp podcast.
What's going on, everybody? This is Joe and Jeff. We have with us today Sawyer, and you know him best for selling over $10 million of product before he turned 18. We're excited to kind of talk to him a bit today and learn about his story. How's it going, Sawyer? Thanks for joining us.
Good, man. That's awesome. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, looking forward to diving in.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I think a lot of people know you, but let's give your quick, kind of elevator pitch background, and we'll start kind of digging into, some of the nitty gritty.
Cool. So I started this all when I was just turned 13 years old. I always kind of had a passion for shoes. I like basketball, stuff like that. So I was into basketball shoes. Jordans, Yeezys were also really big around that time, like 5-6 years ago. And 2017, December was the first time I ever bought anything to flip. And those were the Yeezy 350 blue tints. And all the Yeezys before that were selling for pretty much double the price. So I'm like, okay, if I can get 3 to 5 pairs of these, I keep one for myself, sell the rest of them, and have some profit left over. So it started like that. I got lucky there. I got 5 pairs. After that, I was into Supreme for a while. So they would have the weekly drops Thursday at 11 a.m. So I'd go to school, be in school, and go to the bathroom every Thursday at 11, go buy it on my phone. I would get 1 or 2 units. Did that for about a year or so. So that leads into early 2019. That's when I started to take the business a little bit more seriously, got my LLC set up, and I found out a new model. So back then it was called brick flipping. So basically just selling everyday shoes, Air Forces, Air Maxes, stuff like that what I sell on Amazon today or what I used to sell on Amazon. So we were selling it on that time on StockX and GOAT. And that back in the day, it was really, really quick money because I would go to the mall after school and I was able to just list it on StockX and GOAT immediately. And once you ship out the item, you're getting paid within a couple days. So I was able to do that a lot. I was going to the mall after school every single day, flipping shoes. My dad would drive me there. That was before I could drive myself. So I did that for a little while. In early 2020, that's when things really started to take off. So I got my Amex card then. My mom co-signed on that one. Before I had a super low limit Bank of America card. So I went from an 8,000 total credit I could work with to 75K as soon as I got Amex. So I was just going for it right off the bat. So
How old were you then?
I was 14 turning 15. Yeah. And I started going really hard with that in June or July. And I was super into botting at that time. So I would run some bots myself, but mainly what I was doing is I was paying other people to run bots for me, giving them $5 to $10 per checkout, and then making 30 to 40 on the shoes. Very quick returns too, because I was most of the time selling it all to one buyer. There are a lot of times there's bulk buyers back then. They'll take however many you can get, even if it's 1,000 pairs. So we would sell it all to one person, get that cash in quickly. And during that time was the peak of reselling. So every single release was really, really good. And in December 2020, that's when it completely exploded. We were doing probably 100K revenue months then. I did 400K that December off 2 releases. It was the Yeezy 350 black and red ones and the fire red 4s. Got 1,000 pairs of the fire red 4s, made 30K off of those, and then 40 or 50K on the Yeezys. It was absolutely insane. And I was okay, never working a job again, never going to college. After that, I was my mind is only focused on reselling. So
were you a sophomore in high school then?
No, I was freshman in high school. Yeah. That was when COVID was going on. And that's when my school, it turned virtual then. And after that first year of being virtual, they were you need to come back to class. The problem with that school, there was no phone school. So I was I can't go back to class. I'm doing this full time now. So I switched to just an online homeschool. And that was like early 2021. And that's also the time I found out about Amazon. So a few people that I was doing the brick flips with, the stuff on StockX and GOAT, they were like, yo, you got to check out Amazon. They showed me the Jungle Scout estimate of the Nike Monarchs, and it was like 8,000 sales.
Yeah, the Monarchs. Yeah.
I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I was like, what am I doing selling on these slow selling apps, StockX and Go? I need to sell on Amazon. So we split an Ungate package where the guy literally just told us to buy 10 units on eBay. 5 of us, $7,500, $1,500 from each of us. So that guy hit a lick on us. That was crazy. But I got into it at the perfect time. During that time, reselling like the bots and sneakers and all that stuff, that was really starting to slow down. So I got in at the perfect time to Amazon. I remember there was some drop where I bought a bunch of shoes with bots and it just like broke even. I was like, okay, I'm doing only Amazon from now on. It just makes so much more sense. And I started going really hard in the outlets. And there's a couple OA websites that I was familiar with before I started Amazon that I also bought a lot off of. But during 2021, that's when I got my Sprinter van, doing heavy RA back then. I was 15 years old when I got the Sprinter. I had to have my dad in the passenger seat or him drive it. I had my learner's permit then, so I couldn't even drive it on my own. So I was doing a lot of RA then. There's 2 stores near me, so I was hitting those like 4 or 5 times a week. And then summer rolls around. I got really into pools. I did really well off of. I was going to Walmart's every day for hours and hours, driving all over the state. And then August, I got my license, got a Tesla, and then just doubled down again on OA for that Q4 and got back into RA a little bit at the outlets in 2022. But pretty much after that, it was all OA. I was doing like all shoes at that point, other than when I did the pools for a little bit. At the end of 2022, or actually it was like early 2022, I got a warehouse. And I was using that for a while. I was paying tax on a lot of the shoes. And like we talked about a few minutes ago, Jeff, you're letting the death pile stack up. I was doing the same thing. So I had these 2 rooms where I just fill it up with Amazon boxes. And by the end of the year, I asked my employee, like do an end of year inventory. I was like, tell him to count it all. And he counts it. And it was like 1,200 pairs. And I was like, oh my God, like I need to stop buying shoes for a little bit and like really figure this out. So I ended up getting rid of all of those. It took a while of like just reassessing everything. I started early 2023 playing around with the wholesale model, seeing how that worked. Went to a couple trade shows, getting familiar with how all of that worked. And then I haven't really gotten too deep into shoes since then. There's definitely been a couple times where like someone will send me a link where it's selling thousands of times a month, 50 ROI. And like, I can't pass up on it. I got to buy it. So in that situation, I'll still buy, but I didn't really actively look out for shoes after that. We started to trial a lot of different stuff, like clothing, accessories from the same brands that we were buying the shoes from. And we did really well off of that in Q4 2023. We did some experimenting with that stuff in 2022 as well, like grocery, some of those other categories and more seasonal products. I really enjoyed those flips and doing that. So I kind of stuck with that. That leads us to coming up now. I'm doing a good amount of wholesale, mainly like industrial stuff. And we still do arbitrage for like clothing, accessories, a lot of that same stuff. And I've built a lot of knowledge over the years on just being able to replan items like year over year, month over month on some stuff. And yeah, that leads us to now.
So how old are you now?
I'm 18.
18. And have you finished your online school?
I dropped out a year and a half ago.
All right, so you haven't even got your high school degree.
No.
That, clearly you don't need it. But that's crazy. Yeah, that's really cool. So, the bots. Tell me a little bit about that. Did you build them, or like how did you come up? You just found people build them, or?
So at this time, it was a very popular thing. There was probably 50 companies that all had like pretty big names in the space. And one of them is called CyberSoul. A lot of these bots would sell for thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah. And some of these accounts have like 150,000 followers. There used to be a lot of people using these bots. So they would have big dev teams promote it. A lot of them would resell too. So they would drop retail price for like 500. If you can get your hands on a copy, they're very limited. You could sell it for 2,000 or 3,000. So we did a little bit of that. There was one. So when I first got that Amex card, I got put in touch with a rep and she got me the virtual cards Trade Shift Go. And then I connected another seller with my rep and he ran my cards for like these Nike restocks on these Jordan 1 mids and a couple other random items. And he maxed out my card in like 30 minutes, like just completely ran it up, like 80K worth of stuff. That was like the first time I ever hit big on something. That was with bots too. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of potential here. So then I started investing in some. And after a while, I realized it's not very worth it for me to run them because it's very expensive to buy all the copies of the bots or rent them and then pay for proxies, servers. It was a lot of effort. Like there's definitely nights like before the release where I'd stay up all night setting up the bots. If you're setting up like 10 or 15 of them, it takes a long time to import all your profiles in there, need to jig the address on all of them, have hundreds of different virtual cards ready to go. It was a very like strenuous process. So I ended up just doing profit splits or paying people per item and just having them run for me. And I sold all my bots and it was so much easier. I would wake up on drop day and I would just see like hundreds of charges on my phone coming in. It was so easy too. That was the first time I started to use like prep center. It wasn't really prep center. It was mainly just shipping to friends in like Oregon and New Jersey, all these different states. Yeah. And I wasn't even touching a lot of those products. I don't really know why I started shipping to myself with Amazon. I think it was just because I didn't really understand how many prep centers were out there and how cheap the rates were. I just kind of wanted to do the process myself. But then after a while, I realized like once I had the warehouse and everything, I was paying a lot in rent, paying payroll, and I was still paying sales tax on stuff. I'm like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I was slick when I was 14. I was like building some websites for some people. I had like learned how to do HTML, and this guy that my mom had known wanted to put up his like religious scripture things up online, and he used to pay me like I think it was like 15 or 20 bucks an hour. I was like, man, I'm killing it. I was definitely not killing it. The amount of difference in that is just crazy. It's like when you watch those like the videos of like the people doing all the choreographed dances when they're like 14, and people are like, this is what I was doing when they're 14. They're doing like, you know, some weird dance that doesn't even make sense. Basically the same thing here. That's incredible that you were able to do all that. So so your parents had to be kind of trustworthy of you doing all this stuff because they're signing off and you run it up in 30 minutes, $80,000. Yeah, they had to have some confidence that you knew what you were doing. And can you kind of tell me what that scenario looked like when you're like, oh yeah, everything's maxed out?
Yeah. So that kind of built up the trust a little bit from going to the mall all the time and doing all the Supreme and stuff like that. And what they like, I really had to help them understand like some of these products, especially on the release days and stuff like that. It's like they will always resell for a higher price. It's just a matter of how many you can get. So once they kind of just saw me building up, they started to trust me a lot more. Both of them are entrepreneurs as well, so they sort of understood it. Very different businesses though, but they still like just had an idea of it. And I think that's where I got it from as well. I saw my parents are doing their own things. I can do my own thing. So they just trusted me a lot in the beginning, especially once we ran it up to like that 75K. I sold it all really, really quick. It was like all to one guy again. And after that, my Amex limit built up really fast. And the one time they freaked out, it was when it was on the Jordan 4s that I bought 1,000 pairs of. And it was, I had like 400K on my Amex or something like ridiculous. And they were like, are you sure you're going to be able to sell all these? They were freaking out because it's like, we got the house on the line here. They were definitely scared about that, but I handled it again. And then after that, they were kind of trustworthy with whatever, because that was just like such a crazy moment. And it went from like not a lot in like the late 2019 to late 2020, where it was like 100x what it used to be. So it blew up very quickly.
You had talked about like the Yeezys and doing like bulk buys and stuff. So like, obviously you said there were buyers doing that, but how did you find them? How did you like, again, you're so young into the thing. Like, how did you know to even look that up or to do that, or that would make more money, or like, cause that's so kind of unorthodox from what you would normally think of. Okay, just sell one by one on StockX.
Yeah, so it all came from networking with other sellers who were doing like a lot more volume than me. I was in a lot of Discord groups. I was super active on Twitter back then in like 2019, 2020. And I got connected with some huge buyers, like the two biggest people in the industry back then. One of them is still around and buying. That guy does like $400 million a year, and he would pay top dollar on like everything. That guy's different level. Like I visited his warehouse in 2021 and it was like shocking, but it was all from just meeting people. Back then there was a lot of middlemaning going on, so like someone would basically be paying $200 for a pair of Jordans that were $180 retail and then selling it to another buyer and adding 10 on top. So I always really tried to find that in buyer instead of selling to the middleman. And like the person I shipped to in Oregon, for example, there's a buyer there. You guys might have heard of him, Zeta Kicks. Have you heard about that or no?
I've heard of it. I haven't really followed anything, but I've heard of it.
Basically, is a guy who ran a huge like sneaker pre-order scam, but he was paying top dollar on a lot of shoes back then. So I would ship it to Oregon, like a prep center there, my friend who had a warehouse, and he would like middleman the deal pretty much because he only accepted drop-offs there. So we shipped a lot to him. It's been a crazy journey, but finding the buyers was a huge part of it. Just talking to like really experienced sellers. A lot of it was people who were in those areas because certain buyers only accepted like drop-offs. You couldn't like ship a bunch of stuff to them. And it was a lot cheaper to do that as well. Shipping it to New Jersey, not paying tax on it, and then having a friend drop it off to them, which made so much more sense than like shipping it to me and shipping it out from there.
Yeah, definitely.
That's crazy. Did you ever run into any issues with, some of these essentially random buyers you're finding on the internet? Like,
honestly, not really. I got really lucky with that. I've like never really been scammed or anything like that, other than by retailers. Like I've been scammed more by
right.
Retailers.
You have more trouble buying from Walmart than actually shipping your products probably than the random people you found on the internet. Oh wow, well that's cool.
The crazy part was how I never got scammed on the credit card end, because when I was doing the bot thing and sending my profiles to other people, that had address, credit card, everything, never had an issue. And I probably sent it to 20 kids on Discord. So I guess I was just vetting out good people. Like I got very lucky there.
That's amazing.
Are your parents, how are they involved in the business? Are they actively involved or are they just passively involved
Yeah, they're pretty passively now. When I had my warehouse, my mom and dad were helping out a lot, like making sure that like all the employees were on task, stuff like that. My dad helped a lot over the years with like the corporate side of things, helping the LLC get set up, legal stuff like that. My mom would usually be the one to sign off on credit cards, but they haven't really they've never really done any like sourcing or stuff like in the weeds of the business. I've have them purchase a couple times, like if it's something where you got to do 10 in a row, something like that. They've definitely helped with that because it's hard to trust like a virtual assistant or someone outside the friend or family to purchase with your credit card. So they've helped in those aspects.
That's very cool.
Were they just doing that out of the kindness of their heart, or were you paying them, or like how did that
I pay them now? I didn't for a while though. They were helping me out of the kindness of their heart, and the main thing that was probably a annoyance for them was how many shoes I had in my house. At one point, I had thousands of pairs in my house, and then after a while, I was like, I had to get storage units, and we were driving back and forth. I had 4 storage units at this place. I'm like, I just need a warehouse at this point. It was just such a headache that the storage unit days were not fun. It'd be so hot outside, moving the pools and stuff around. As soon as I got the warehouse, I was like, oh, this is so nice. But it was
the liability is massive too, because you have to have insurance and each of those things. If you don't, something happens, you're out of luck.
Oh, and there's been times where like we're filling up with hundreds of pairs and just a random guy looks by. I'm like, damn, that guy just looks like he wants to take all these.
I had a buddy, he rode his try to follow this. He rode his bicycle from New Jersey to Argentina, and he left Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and he was going to be going over the bridge into Philly, and he was having trouble getting up the hill, pushing his trailer. And this guy's kind of looking at him like, "Hey, that's a nice bike you have." But he's like, "It's not really that good." He's like, he's trying not to get robbed. Like his first 20 miles, not even out of probably 5 miles out of his from his house onto his journey. But yeah, it can be scary because you don't know, is that person going to come back, or they're going to try to. And the storage units are not hard to break into.
Yeah, that was definitely something we were worried about. Another reason for the warehouse being a benefit.
Yeah, that's cool. You don't have the warehouse anymore then?
No, I moved out like about a year ago today, like early June last year. So I've been free of all that for a year. It's a massive stress off my shoulders. I don't think I'll ever go back to a warehouse. I just shifted my focuses. I want to just stay online, work from home, work from anywhere I want to. I'm sure you could do that with like a really good warehouse operation, but I wasn't the best running it, honestly. Like I'm still very hands-on, like overseeing everything, making sure everything was running smoothly. Like we had a manager, but it was just a lot of work on my end. So I was like, I need to just take this off my hands.
Yeah, you had mentioned, you're doing the wholesale. Once you start getting into that many units, it can start to be enticing to bring that back in house and do that versus paying a warehouse to do that. I mean, a prep center to do that. So that's what kind of why I was asking, because now if you're ramping back up into that, you're gonna be like, I can save 60 cents per unit on the cost, and now all of a sudden that starts being a lot of money.
With wholesale, we've mainly looked at higher ASP stuff. So like on the industrial side of things, some of our products sell for like $800 to $1,000. So we never really, like, at first when I had the warehouse, I was looking at smaller ASP, like the beauty, grocery, stuff like that. And I realized, like, when I was moving out, I'm like, this is not going to work with a prep center. And with all like the placement fees, low inventory, I was moving in the right direction of going for the higher ASP stuff. It's just like you have much more room to work on your margin.
Scary on the return side of it if you're going through Amazon with that, though, because people, they literally are focusing on trying to scam you.
Yeah,
it can be awful. $800 unit that you just have to eat the cost of.
Yeah, well, luckily it's mainly a product that businesses buy. It's mainly B2B, so we don't have too many. Like the return on that is like 2%. But if it was higher, we wouldn't be buying it.
Yeah.
So what's your breakdown right now? OA versus wholesale.
So we were mainly wholesale for the start of the year. Now I'm back mainly arbitrage after this last week. We spent a crap ton on all these Memorial Day sales. Yeah. So I'm probably like 65% OA right now, 35 wholesale. I haven't really done any A to A flips. I know that's something that you're into. I've literally done it only a couple of times for like toys and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's usually a little bit more complex. As I said, it's actually where I started was doing some A to A flips, and I've just been doing it since. And then it's it can lead us down rabbit holes of finding other stuff, and it's a different model, but like it.
I've found a lot of people in our group. I kind of wish I had started doing that, because you get, it's like similar like the leads list. You get pushed down all these different categories immediately. You're kind of safer because you're buying them from Amazon, or, for the most part, Amazon, to flip back on Amazon. So you know that they're going to be authentic. You know that if you get a complaint with it, that you can fight it easily, because it'd be pretty embarrassing for Amazon to say they're selling inauthentic stuff to you. But you get exposed to so much more, and it's all right there. You're buying from one place. They're not going to cancel on you, or for the most part, not going to cancel unless you're buying from some of the third-party stuff, which you can get into. But yeah, just it kind of opened my eyes. I knew about it, did a little bit of it, but never really, probably spent under $1,000 of it until I met Jeff, and then started spending some more. And I was like, this is pretty incredible what you can do with it. And then now seeing all the things that are going on with the challenges and stuff with the flips challenges, it's pretty crazy what the capabilities are.
Definitely.
It's dope. Just baffled. It's so cool. Your story's so cool. Like, you're still so young and you've accomplished so much. And, how was managing employees? It's got to be weird for, I guess it depends on the age, but you got a 30, 40-year-old person, you got a 15-year-old, telling them what to do, like as a boss and stuff. Like,
so I hired pretty much all people close to my age. My oldest employee was like 21, 20, but still it was a little bit weird managing someone like as a friend. If I were to do it again, I would hire random people or people like my age, but not who I'm friends with.
Yeah, I got you. No, that makes sense. Because
there's whole courses you can take on like how to work with your family and friends, and it's because it's so difficult to do, and not everybody gets along with their parents. I worked with both my parents at different times. My mom had worked at Habitat for Humanity, and I started working there, swinging hammers and doing stuff that. And then I did sales with my dad, and both of them happen to get along with very well, still get along with them very well. But a lot of people absolutely do not. And then when you hire your friends and something goes wrong, it's all of a sudden it's like puts that into jeopardy, and it can be extremely taxing on the relationship.
100%. I would never do it again. We'll put it like that.
Yep. How did your parents, the whole schooling thing, like, were they fully supportive? Did you have to, really push to say, hey, I'm not going back to school? Like, there's too much money to be made. Like, I can't. They won't let me buy during the. How did that conversation go?
So after 2020, when I went really, really crazy on like all the botting stuff,
Yeah.
they understood that I probably wasn't going to college at that time.
Yeah.
They were totally cool with the virtual school. So I was doing the virtual school for like a year and a half, 2 years. And that's when things started to get more consistent with Amazon. With the sneakers, it was really up and down because like you could have a release 1 week that's really good and then 4 weeks of no good products to buy.
Yeah.
So once I started to have like more consistent revenue, they were much more cool with it. And I just slowed down on the school stuff so much. Like I was like barely going to those classes and stuff because they're working during the day. They're not gonna be watching me. I'm like sourcing, not with my camera on at all. They're calling my name and stuff. Like I was just like not present there at all. And they recommended me. They're like, with your story and your situation, it'd probably be better for you to get a GED. So I was like, okay. And then I was like, I don't really need to do this anymore. Never got the GED or anything, probably never will. But they were kind of cool with it after a couple years of me doing Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're clearly very bright to be running a business at this scale at that young. It's crazy. So that's.
Well, he was even calculating loss. I know he did another interview or another thing on Instagram, one of his reels, where he was talking about how he calculated how much he lost when the school took his phone away for like a month, and it was just a pretty astronomical amount for being in middle school or high school or whatever. He was probably middle school at that point.
They caught me on the phone so much to make me bring it in the morning and like leave it all day. So I was like, I can't deal with this. Like I gotta be able to respond to people and stuff.
That's crazy. Incredible. Yeah. So I guess COVID really helped kickstart things for you and be able to say, okay, this is what I can do, when I'm not stuck in school all the time.
Yeah, that's what completely changed my life. Like COVID happened. I don't know if I'd be where I'm at today without that happening.
Now, were you also buying those pools that had the cover with them, and if you shipped them together, they were over the weight of UPS, and people are getting hit with the fines?
Oh yes. But I was buying labels from third parties back then, or it's just like people I know. Some kid I know had a crazy good UPS account, so I was buying from him. So I don't know if he got hit with the surcharges, but I didn't have to deal with that. But after a while, I heard about that, and I started to separate them, and it added so much labor to it, taking out the filter or whatever and shipping it separately, and then shipping also the pool made shipping way more expensive. That was like kind of when it was winding down on pool season. So thankfully I didn't deal with that, because I heard some stories of people losing like 30K off that.
Yeah, they sold so many, and then they were like, well, we're still profitable. I'm like, how many pools did you sell that you lost 30K in UPS charges? and like, it just unfathomable amount of money. Like, that's just crazy. I mean, I was busy during COVID doing other stuff, but not anything related to that. That's just insane to me.
Yeah, we were mainly doing the smaller ones, like the 10-foot Intex ones that came in the box from Walmart. But I definitely know what you're talking about, which model it was, though. It was like it said on the box 149.7 or something like that. But when UPS actually weighed it, it was over the 150. So I remember talking a bunch with my driver about that and saying how like it was like a countrywide thing with a lot of people shipping those out. He kind of kept me in the loop with all that stuff early, so I knew to start separating it.
Yeah. And Jeff, I don't know if you heard about any of that stuff, but yeah, it pushed it just over the amount where they instituted a bunch of fines because it was over what the allowable amount to the ship was for it. And so, like, some people got hammered.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I know pools were super hot during sort of COVID and then, 2021. But now that's the first time I'm hearing that. But yeah, I mean, I know that's something you got to watch out with the UPS. Like they're very, I see it all the time with us. They're notorious of just adding like massive overage fees and all this other stuff. Where did this come from? What did I do?
Well, and you don't get the Amazon fee with it anymore. You get the full price fee. You don't get the discount.
Oh yeah, you don't get the discount.
If you mess up.
Yep.
That's crazy.
It could be pretty massive. So what were some, like, give us kind of the play-by-play, some like the big wins that you had, or like huge days, because it sounds like you've done some massive like single days. Give us a little bit of the highlight reel.
So on Amazon, some of the big, like my 2021 Black Friday was crazy. I did like 75K. I hadn't really done much merchant fulfilled, and I had like 800 pairs of these Converse come in, and I just like listed them all one day. All of them sold. So like that like absolutely like pumped my sales. And back then the prices were so much better than they were now.
Yeah.
That was a really good one. This last year we had a really, really good December we are much better now about like spreading out our inventory and like actually hitting the highest prices possible on some stuff. Cause like I realized after selling all those in a day, I'm like, if I just waited like 2 more weeks to like mid-December, I could have gotten like 20% higher prices. So
can't do that to yourself. Learn from it, do it the next time.
Yeah.
Don't dwell on that stuff. The money you
Exactly.
made, the money you made. It could have swung the other way too. What's that?
Yeah.
You're probably too young, but Mighty Ducks thing, like quarter inch the other way, you would have missed the net entirely.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, so that was a big one. This last Q4 was our biggest December. We did like 700K December, all on credit cards too. So I'm excited to play with loans this year. I've never taken like an Amazon loan or had a line of credit with interest or anything like that. So I'm excited to see what I can do with that. In the sneaker days, there was a lot of like 1 day big wins because of just how botting was, where it all happens on 1 day. The big ones were like the Bread 350 Yeezys, the Fire Red 4s, the Flint 13s. There's a couple Jordan models that like really popped off. We'll get like a couple hundred pairs on each one. It was like easy money. Back then we would sell it on GOAT, and people, this was so common back then. People would like work at UPS and just scan the labels. So it'd mark as shipped. So it'd give us like a few extra days, and then we would ship it out with the label once the item comes in. But you're able to sell it on drop day instead of having to wait to list it when it comes in. So that was one thing that pretty much everyone was doing. It was so easy to get like the higher sale prices during then. And then selling to bulk buyers a lot too. We bought a ton of Air Force Ones and sold them to bulk buyers. Those were some of the other huge wins that we had. Like one time I sold like 4,000 pairs at once to a buyer. So that same guy who does like 400 mil a year, that dude was buying like every Air Force One on the market when they were $90 retail.
How do you know they're not fake at that point? Like you're buying so many of them from so many different people.
No, I was buying them from retailers and selling them to a buyer. So they were paying over retail for Air Force Ones.
And what does he do with them?
He sold them. He said he sold them internationally. This guy
sells
like
35 countries. Selling out of the country.
Yeah, and he distributes to like a ton of the stores in like New York and places like that. So I'm sure he probably had some of those. That dude is crazy. Like I went to his warehouse in 2021. It's like 120,000 square feet. He had like millions of pairs of shoes in there. Like it was ridiculous. Never seen anything like that before. But he was selling them all over the place. But he bought like 50,000 pairs in a month one time. And then after that, he was like tapped out on buying. But like everyone was buying them for like $90 and selling them for $95. It was crazy.
Now, did you ever get into the used shoe game at all?
Not really, actually.
The reason I asked is I'm not a shoe guy. Like what you just said was all gibberish for the yellow, flitch, gray. I have no idea what the heck they are. Unless I'm like really into it and looking at it. Like if I go on to like the Nike website and I print out a list from Keepa and then I organize by name, then I'll start picking up on like, okay, this is this, and I'll start recognizing them. Then it's out of my head. I have a really good memory. It's not for shoes, but it's I see like these videos on these used things where people are like buying a table worth of stuff for like $30,000. I'm like, is this real? Like, do people buying these used scummy shoes that are? I don't get it, but it's amazing what people will hold stuff and then sell. So if you weren't doing the used shoes at all, did you ever like hold things and say, okay, I'm going to hold this for a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and focus on that?
Yeah, so we did that for a little bit in 2019, 2020. I would hold for like usually 6 months, a year at most. I tried with retros a lot, like some of like the more popular ones, and they would do okay. But I realized like if I just sold it quickly and then recouped the money and kept using it, would be more profit over time. Some of the shoes that we did hold for longer were like Jordan 1 lows and mids. Those during 2020, or is honestly pre-2020, 2019 or so, there's tons of demand in China for like the grade school sizes and 8 through 9.5. So the prices on some of these shoes would be like $300 for size 8.5 and like $150 for size 12. So it would just fall off a cliff once you got to the bigger sizes. And those would go out of like style very quickly. Like the mids, after 6 months, all of them were hitting like double the price they were when they came out. So that was a huge thing that we were doing back then, all size 4 through 9.5. That used to run the sneaker market for like Jordans and stuff like that. They only went sizes 9.5 and below.
Wow. That's crazy. So like Joe, I'm not a big sneakerhead, or, again, I recognize some of those names you're saying, but talk me through this a little bit. Like, so, the shoe drop. So like, why is it because are these limited releases?
Yes.
And so there was only X amount. So if you didn't get it, then it wasn't like you go to, Foot Locker and buy it later, right? Like,
Yep. So in-store has their own system for these. So usually it would be either raffles. First come, first serve was pretty common back then, but it became less and less common over the years. They kind of all shifted towards like raffles. So with Foot Locker, I don't know if you guys have ever had the Foot Locker app before, but you can enter and your chances of winning are based on how many points and like purchase history you have. So we were able to win like every single time in store, and online it was just a shit show. Like if you tried to go on that website manually and buy them, you're sitting in the queue. It's like lagging really, really hard. It was really tough to get a lot of those models without bots or having good purchase history at Foot Locker. So like what I would do with some of those in-store releases, New York and LA, like some of those cities would have like very exclusive models. I'm in Savannah, so they're not going to have like crazy shoes that are going to resell for like 10x the price. It's going to just be like the more generic Jordans and stuff like that would sell for like make 30% on. But some of those crazy releases, I would rent out my account and people would just go pick up because I was winning like every single release. But after a while, they banned all like the in-store accounts with over a certain amount of points. But we had a crazy Foot Locker account that would literally hit on every single shoe.
That's crazy. You were renting your account.
Yeah.
That's insane. The ways you were finding to make money, it's insane. So, and then they were just limited. So it wasn't like if you didn't get it during launch, it's
gone. Yeah, on some of those drops, like on the Foot Locker and stuff like that, they'd be gone in like 5 minutes. And
that was it.
Yeah. Don't they stagger the drops though? Like different stores have different release times, so you can catch it on another store.
Yes, some of them do, some of them don't. Usually the big ones to buy off of were like Nike or Yeezy Supply. Sneakers, the Sneakers app was always really hard to bot. Finish Line and Foot Locker, all the foot sites, those were really, really big back then. Foot sites were like the most popular thing to bot. Those would all come out at the same time as Finish Line. Sneakers would sometimes be a little different than those. So it's usually around 10 a.m. every single time. Yeezy Supply was the weird one where they would have drops at 3 a.m. sometimes, like crazy times, or like very, very like 7 a.m. It was weird. It's kind of all over the place with Yeezy Supply. So sometimes it would be like a shock drop and you just have to sit there and wait until the password page or whatever comes down and you can buy the product. So It was a lot of just waiting. Most of them were like around the same time though. So it'd be very hectic like during that time. It's trying to get as many as you can from multiple places.
That's so cool. I love it. So why have you sort of I mean, obviously, you know a lot about shoes. You've been doing shoes since you were 13. Why shifting out of shoes and into wholesale?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with the original Seeker market, that like all the reselling stuff with all the bots and stuff, that really slowed down in 2021 to the point now where it's not even profitable. But for shoes on Amazon, we had a few places that we would buy from where we just had like such a competitive advantage on stuff where normal people could not figure it out. It was very, very easy for us to source. But once, like I was doing a lot from the outlets then too, but that got a little bit more saturated in like 2022, 2023. So I slowed down with that. And I honestly, it just made a lot more sense to logistically to focus on like the clothing and accessories. We did really, really well off of that when we kind of focus on that rather than the shoes. And another thing too, I don't have a warehouse really to store my like returns or stuff coming back. So I wouldn't want to deal with that again. Cause when we were selling like 3,000 to 4,000 pairs a month, we're getting like 100, 200 pairs back a month. So now so much time. You know it better than anyone.
I got you. So so you just try to get to the areas where it's, still taking advantage of some of the name brand, but stuff with lower return rates, lower shipping costs, better.
Every once in a while we'll get shoes. Usually if someone sends it to me and it's really, really good, I'm like, okay, I have to buy this.
Yeah. I got you.
Have any of the retail people that you were visiting like call you and like, hey, are you coming back in ever again? Like, we
at
miss
the
you
mall,
kind of thing?
Definitely. When I was going to the mall, anytime I walk through there now, all the same managers are usually still there. I'm like, where you been, man? Like, how you doing? They're all asking, trying to get the sales again. But for like online retailers, not really. There's a couple that
they don't care.
Yeah, like they were letting it fly for years, and they just one day were like, okay, we're never letting you get a checkout through without a cancel again.
That's funny. Are you doing stuff outside of Amazon, or outside of e-commerce, or are you still just trying to focus on that and grow that as much as you can before you start dabbling in other ventures?
Yeah, I'm pretty much just focused on e-com right now, doing a little bit of content, starting a group, stuff like that, but mainly just focused on Amazon. I have a Walmart account open. I've sold like a few toys on there that they sold really well, great margin. It's just there's so little data on Walmart to like make a purchasing decision. It's like literally gambling. When I'm telling how much quantity I want to buy, I'm looking at how many reviews they have in the past year. So it's just like shooting darts in the dark. I just don't really know what I'm doing on there.
And sometimes there's multiple listings for the same things. I haven't sold a shoe. Like I haven't listed. I haven't sold a shoe on them. And I'm like reluctant to send anything to them because I'm like, I don't know how this sells. So it's like I'm FBMing it. And I was like, I don't really want to hold this stuff. I want to send it to either Amazon or Walmart. But with Walmart, you just have, like I said, zero data. And it's scary to just be like, all right, let's let this go and see what happens.
Yeah, it's too much of a guessing game for me.
Yeah. Now everything I have on there sells higher price, it seems like, than on Amazon, which is nice.
And lower fees too on most stuff.
Yeah, especially when you're I think the first year or something, they give you even additional like discounts or something back, like credits back for being a seller, or maybe 6 months. I don't know. There's something where if you look at the account, it says like some sort of like new seller credit or something, where it gives you something back and it tells you each like you saved $642 this pay period or whatever.
I've had my Walmart account open for like years. I just never sold on there. The first time I heard someone mentioning like Walmart sold, I'm like, okay, I'll just go ahead and make my account. So I've had it for like 2.5 years now. So I'm not getting whatever discounts there are. I kind of wish I was now that I'm starting to send stuff in or like try out like the volume on there. But
that's what Jeff was saying with some of the fees that they're instituting. They're like, new sellers don't get hit with this fee. He's like, man, I wish I was a new seller.
I still don't understand how they decided, okay, new sellers don't have to pay low inventory fee. Like,
that's crazy.
Why are they?
Well, they're like, who makes us the most money? All right, we're not going to help them.
Let's waive the new sellers. I don't know. And okay, fine. Then they need to learn. Maybe give them 3 months, maybe 6 months, but 12 months of no low inventory fees. That's
like when I go to Home Depot to buy something, I buy like $5,000 or something, and they're like, you want to save 20% by opening a card. I'm like, I already have a card, and they're like, okay, well you can't have. Like, I still want the 20% if you're just giving it out. I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Not for you. Oh. So all right, so you're kind of get into why did you shift in? Did you just shift into the price point of the for the industrial type stuff, or did you do that because the fees are lower, or what were you?
Yeah, 1, fees are lower. 2, we do a lot of B2B stuff, so they're buying in higher quantities and they're not really returning it. 3, no wholesale sellers. I mean, obviously there's a lot that are looking there, but like compared to like health and household, beauty, grocery, so many less sellers and just less experienced sellers too. Like a lot of people we compete against are like retailers that just do like FBM. So we hop on FBA and just dominate the buy box.
Yeah, because the industrial and scientific is like 8%, I think, is on it. And because it's something I know, like, back in my old work, I was working in some laboratories doing some stuff, and I was trying to find some specific parts and pieces for some things because we were doing some construction. And you find some of them on Amazon and some of them weren't. And then now I'm like going back to like thinking, I'm like, all right, what were those things that I was looking for that I couldn't find? Because that's what I should be buying and selling out here. I have no problem creating listings. I that doesn't bother me. And especially if it's something like that, like if it's very specific and somebody wants it, they're going to get it. So, and that's the same thing you're seeing is like, if they can get it quick and not have to wait, 3 weeks or back order, special order product or those kind of things, from somebody, they're going to buy it through you. Now, you're sending that FBA still?
Yeah, pretty much all. I don't really do any merchant fulfillment anymore. I did when I had my warehouse, but once I was moving out of there, I'm like, okay, I'm going to see what happens here if I only do FBA. Honestly, don't regret it at all. Every time I used to do FBM, I used to see late shipment rate, order defect rate. There's always that risk of deactivation of my account. I'm like, I don't really want to see that anymore. Deal with that, yeah. So I haven't really done that much. But are you guys creating listings a lot and like bringing them to life, like running ads and stuff, or is that not very common?
I've probably created more than Jeff's created. I had screwed up the first things I ever bought. I messed up. I thought I was following stuff, and again, like I don't know where I wear the same stuff all the time. I shop more. It's crazy that I'm even buying stuff. It's amazing. But I had bought some Nike shirts that had like, I thought it was the black logo and it came white. And I was like, I can't sell this on this list. Now, a lot of people would just say, hey, send it in. It'll be fine. No one's going to care. But I want to be on the up and up with it. So I cared. And I'm like, man, there's no listing for this thing. So I looked it up, figured it out, watched a couple of videos, put up a thing, and it was Nike. And it started selling. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then my repricer, because there was no other person on it, just jumped up to like, $104 for a polo like one day. And I'm like, oh geez, I'm like, no one's gonna buy that. And I went to go like get in there and like manually put a max. I had like maxes. It was before like everything had kicked over to too high a pricing, let's kick you out type thing.
Yeah.
So it was right around that same time, because eventually it did kick in. But it was like $104 and it was a polo. And I was like, oh, I gotta go in and change that. I think I was out at like a barbecue or something. I came back and I sold 3 of them. And I'm like, who is buying this at $105? and like the sale was still going on Nike when it was like one of those like month-long things. And I was like, this is so stupid.
That's a lot.
And it was insane. But yeah, I've created a bunch of them. I've never had to put I don't purposely do special ads for them. I do sometimes run ads in general on my storefront for stuff, and I'll run the same ads on that I'm running for everything else. I don't go and specifically go crazy with the specific product to push it like you would a private label or anything, but I'm usually picking something that's very name brand. So if people type in Nike, it's going to pop up at some point anyway. That eventually gets ranked, and then Jeff finds it, and then I got to get off it. Which just happened.
Yeah. I probably hopped on some of your listings, but I've created some as well. I not necessarily arbitrage, but wholesale. We had some agreements with some of our wholesalers. I had a toy wholesaler that we used to do some business with, and we created their listing. And it was me and one other seller that like worked together with it, and we were the exclusive seller for it. And that year in Q4, we were selling, I think, each of us were selling 800 units a day. Moving like 1,500 units a day total. On a toy that like the listing we created, like it was, I think it peaked at like 80 in toys and games or something like that. Or maybe it was 150, I forget, but it was crazy.
That's still crazy.
Yeah, no, it was insane.
At the time, we were selling like, I said 800 a day. We call up the supplier like, can we send another truckload of this? Like just this one game, like just send it. So so we've created some. But yeah, I mean, it's not something we're doing a lot of. It's got difficult and to an extent like risky of like, okay, like am I gonna are they gonna block it because it's a brand register, or am I gonna get in trouble later? I at times sort of like Joe, like I forget what happened, but I know like it was during the Hatchimal craze, and I bought like I don't know, a couple thousand of some like Hatchimal thing, and I think when it finally showed up, it sucked. And I was like, well, I can't make money. Amazon was on the listing. So I'm like, this is not going to make any money. Like Amazon's on the listing. I paid a little bit cheaper. So I would create like bundles, like, using the brand name, but you get a GTNI exemption or whatever and create the bundles, and they would go nuts in Q4. But it's just, it's got so much harder. I haven't played with it much outside of, the wholesale, like, with the authorized permission to create it.
I've even had some where like you go to order the product and it gets to you and you finally see the UPC for the first time. You go to register it and there's like somebody had already stole that UPC and listed a different product on it. And then you go and you show all the information to Amazon and they're like, well, we'll talk to the original listing owner. Like, what do you got to talk to them about? Like, it's clearly not the right thing. It's not the right one. And it takes forever. And it happened with the Stanley listings too, where like they'll take whatever color that came out and they'll pop a new thing on it and then sell the second one as something different and make it so that nobody can scan it and see what that is. And it's a totally different, store only color. And it may be similar or it's just completely different. And they'll do that too. So you got to be a little bit careful with some of that. But yeah, I've created a bunch. I've fixed a lot, and especially during Q4. If there's something that's like slightly off or looks a little different this year around, I'll go and I'll tweak some stuff. And for whatever reason, Amazon's been paying attention to what I say to them. So they'll fix stuff, especially if it's in the descriptions. Why do you ask? Have you created stuff or you
never created anything before? So I want to learn the skill just to know how to do it. That should be.
Let me know whenever. I'll help walk you through it. But it's pretty easy to go through it. Now, every once in a while, if you go through their wizard thing on it, it'll have a hiccup and you lose all the stuff you put in there. So they'll tell you the best thing to do is do a flat file, which is basically just a CSV file, and you upload it. It is technically easier, but as you look at it, you're like, what do I put in here? How do I populate it? And there's no like, hey, here's an example. It's just like, here's the file, and you got to figure out what all these things mean. So that can kind of be annoying.
I've looked at the variation wizard before. I didn't end up adding anything. Anytime I like make an out of stock ASIN in stock, I'm always just using the reselling little extension on there that has out of stock variations. I love that tool. That's pretty much the only time I've ever like added on a variation or anything.
You're the first person that's under the age of us that I've seen really talk about like reseller. How did you find reseller?
Well, I was using reselling, I think, before SellerAmp even came out. I have SellerAmp now too. I both like them for two different things. So reselling I really like for the out of stock variations. With SellerAmp, one thing that's really interesting, sometimes if a listing doesn't have a sales rank on the Keepa, you can look at the SellerAmp version of the Keepa and it'll have that missing data. So we've seen that. I don't really know how that's possible because they're pulling from Keepa, but there's been times where like I didn't know like how low the rank went in December. It was like and the last time I could see it was in like September or August. It was a seasonal item and it was at like 100K rank. But then I check the SellerAmp Keepa and it has the data of December and it hit like 5K, 10K. So I'm like, oh, I'm about to go way deeper on these than I expected.
Wow. Interesting. I'll have to look at it. I've been using AZ Insight lately. Didn't know a whole lot about it. Started using it. And again, same thing, the out of stock portion of it. I'm like, wow, this makes it just so much easier. I'll search Keepa for out of stock stuff all the time or stuff about to go out of stock. And that just made everything. It saved me so much time, just that alone, and it loads up so fast that it's one of those things. But it's similar to reseller in that aspect. But it has a in-store component that you can use. They have an app that you can scan stuff inside a store, which I don't think reseller has.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
I like they have like IP alert.
That's built into it too. It's AZ alert, I think.
AZ alert, yeah. So that way, right on the calculator, it's warning you, hey, again, it's far from perfect because
but it also tells you like this was an actual IP complaint in 2022 November, and it was whatever thing, or this was generated because someone reported they got a cease and desist letter from. So it tells you like why that's actually there, which is cool.
Yeah, it's crowdsourced a bit, and obviously there could be some bogus stuff in there too. But at least raises the flag. I mean, to me, Keep is one of the best places to look for those sort of cliff drops to try to find your IPs. But at least it flags. Okay, let me look at it and see.
But if I see the AZ alert pop up, IP alert come up, and then a cliff, then I know I might be a little bit at risk.
It's a good one to pass.
Yeah. But if you get into creating a listing stuff, let me know and I can kind of walk you through it. It's once you do it once, it's pretty easy, and then they kind of flag you along the way and say like, oh, you forgot this, and the highlight's red, and you just go and add something in there. And there's a couple ways to stay out of trouble, and then obviously if you take your own photos is going to be the key, because that's where you can really seriously get in trouble if you're doing copyright infringement on other people's photos.
Okay, got it. That's good to know. Definitely.
Yeah, that's the big one. Now you can also get from the brand, and you can get authorization to use their photos. You just have to get something that says, here's the photo package that we're allowing you to use. But if you pull it off of like, Granger's website and say, okay, I'm going to use that photo and put it on there, now you're in serious trouble.
Really interesting. I didn't know that.
And people do it all the time.
You're not in serious trouble until you get
caught.
But yes, you would. It wouldn't be a bogus IP complaint. It would be legit. Hey, you violated their IP by taking their picture.
Copyright.
Copyright infringement, whatever the right word is. It definitely can.
Yeah, and I see it all the time. Like you see like the Kohl's images up on Amazon all the time with stuff. And if they're not getting in trouble, fine. But if they do and they want to raise a case by it, you have no leg to stand on. You created it. It has a thing that says Dylan made this. So you do want to be careful with that. But a lot of stuff that you're buying, you can probably get authorization from wherever you're buying it from to use whatever stock, because they want you to sell it.
I mean, a wholesale, that's usually where I'll start is, hey, do you guys have any stock photos I can utilize to create listings? And because they may have stock, I mean, they should have stock files. They might even have lifestyle photos, whatever they have, get it from them, and then you got the authorization to use it. But taking it from other random websites where you can get in trouble, especially again from the arbitrage perspective, where you're already dealing with the fact that some of these companies are going to file bogus IP complaints saying you're violating their IP by listing it. You definitely want to make sure the pictures are legit when you create it.
Cool. So you staying in Georgia then? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, I'm in Savannah, Georgia. I really like Miami. I'm thinking about moving down there soon. Beautiful weather during the winter time. It's just a very nice place to be. The only thing I actually really, really like Savannah. The only thing I don't like about it is I don't know any other like e-commerce people, if anyone who makes money online, really. Like, so I know one guy.
Is that?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Probably though. Yeah.
That's crazy that one little small area has so many influencers and sellers and e-commerce people, and like it's nuts.
It's
great. You know what's funny though? It's funny to see what the influencers online look like when they don't have all the makeup on and all the different things like walking around. Like you see them walking through your apartment complex. You're like, is that the same person? It's pretty funny. We've seen it in Dallas a bunch when we used to work on apartment buildings there, and you'd be like, there's no way that's that person. And then they get on, you're like, yeah, that's that person. It's incredible.
That's how it is there. But it's really cool. It's like, that's like the one place. Philadelphia is one of those places in New Jersey too, where you can like go hit up a few people, have a dinner with 10 Amazon sellers, same day planning it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not possible here, which is the one thing I don't like.
Yeah, Dallas and Fort Worth, we could do that too for the most part, but it starts to get a little bit. Houston's got a bunch too, I'm sure, but then you got to be in Houston, which the humidity there is awful, almost as bad as Miami.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Houston it's so hot and it's so humid, and it gets the air blown off the Gulf. It traps it in the city. It's bad. I'd say it's worse than Miami. But I was having this argument with Miles online the other day. I was posting because he's saying that it's not that humid in Miami, and I was like, like Hawaii has rainforests, and like if you look at the national averages, Miami has more humidity than Hawaii.
Wow, that's crazy. It felt very humid. I was there last week. It felt very humid, but Savannah is the same way. It's very humid here too. I think the percentages are about the same. So I'm kind of used to it. I'm very used to the heat. I don't like the cold though. I definitely want to stay down south. I've actually never been to Texas either. I want to plan a trip out there.
Let me know. You're welcome to stay.
Cool.
But Tampa's cool too. I don't know if you've been to Tampa. That's
I haven't. Fun. That's like the one place in Florida I haven't been to.
You should go there, and that's fun. And I love cigars, so Tampa's a huge place for cigars and the birthplace of a bunch of brands there too. So that's cool. One of the key things for me. But you don't catch me as a cigar person, so but who knows? But anyway, well, hey, it's been cool kind of chat with you. It's been one of those things where I've seen you pop up a bunch of times. I'm glad I got to have a conversation with you and kind of laugh out some of this stuff. It's wild to see what you've done in such a short period of time, and being the age that you are and the maturity that you have with it. It's really cool to see sellers like that, and we're excited to see kind of what you're going to come up with in the future here.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah. And then if you're not in our Discord, join that too. I'm sure there's so many people.
I'm in.
Okay, because other people like talking about you, and I was like, oh, we should probably get him in here.
Let me I gotta check that now.
Now, where do we find you?
I'm at I am Dylan Sawyer on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram.
Okay. And then, do you have any Discord stuff as well, or are you kind of?
I'm working on it. It's behind the scenes right now. We're doing something special.
Let us know when you get it. We'll put a link in our thing to push people over to it as well.
Cool. Thank you guys.
All right, so we appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Good chatting with you.
Sir.